Sanbonani, good evening, Dumelang, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zama. I hope you've had a great weekend, you're well rested, and of course, ready to get the week started. I know it's the end of the day on a Monday, so you've probably had quite a long day today. A lot of us in Gauteng are under siege. It is incredibly hot. I feel as though I'm dying. I don't know how people in Tshwane and above are even doing right now, because I feel as though we are living through hell right now. But we are, of course, talking property this evening, and that's something that we are always excited to talk about here on the Private Property Podcast. But before we get started with our conversation this evening, I want to hear from you if you've watched one of our new shows. I think one of the great things about us here at Private Property is that we're always giving the people what they want. We're certainly, widening our offering to you and giving you the best content when it comes to all things relating to property. And of course, that new show that I'm talking about is the Farming Podcast. Have you caught wind of the Farming Podcast yet? If you haven't, then, well, that's certainly something that you should be tuning into. It is, of course, hosted by Umbali Mogo, and it comes to you every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock, right here on our social media platforms. So if you have an interest in farming, you want to find out whether you want to start, with the small farm holding, or perhaps you've got funds for a slightly bigger one, that is certainly the show that you want to tune into. Do make sure that you set those reminders for Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. right here on the Private Property social media pages, and tune into the Farming Podcast. I think one of the really great things with the Farming Podcast is Mbali herself is a farmer, has a very big interest in farming, and really understands the ins and outs of farming. And that's exactly what we do here. I mean, you've got somebody who hosts this show, the Private Property Podcast, who's an active investor, has been a tenant, is a landlord, and really understand the full spectrum of what it is to, be both a tenant and a landlord. And then, of course, with the Farming Podcast, we did exactly just that. So bringing you experts, not only to host the show, but also, of course, to help us navigate our property journeys. And now we're going beyond looking at, apartments and houses and even blocks of flats, but of course, venturing into farming. So do make sure that you tune into the Farming Podcast with Umbali, and do show her some love. I think more than anything, wanted to see that this community is an engaged community where we really do love finding out new things about everything relating to real estate. Well, when we talk real estate, of course, one of the big things that we talk about is certainly something that comes to being a developer, and that's something that we're going to be exploring this evening. We're looking at property development do's and don'ts from a seasoned developer. I'm sure a lot of you certainly don't need me to introduce our next guest. We've had him here before, but for the new guys who are watching us, whether on Instagram, YouTube, or even new watchers on Facebook, I'd like to introduce Frank Ngwenya, who's a co-founder and MD of Fraude Group. Frank, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and welcome. I'm grateful to be here again. Thank you so very much.
And Frank, I think one of the really big things about having you back on is we're seeing a lot of people having, interest in going into development. And a lot of us probably who want to go into development may not necessarily be looking at, building huge developments. You almost want to start it relatively small, just so you also project manage a smaller unit, smaller units rather, smaller budget, and make some of the mistakes, because the reality is you're going to make mistakes. I think if your story is certainly something to go by, and a lot of other investors, that there are a few teething mistakes that we all make in the early stages of our property investment journey. And you don't want to have to make that with a big budget, right?
Yes.
Which probably brings us to what should be the first thing that we should do? I mean, we're exploring the do's and don'ts. So to our viewers at home who are thinking, look, I've now probably bought maybe 2 or 3 investment units. I'm certainly now looking to expand into, blocks of flats. What should be the first thing that they should do in the event where they want to now, go and become a developer?
Yeah, now if they want to move to another step, let's say they want to buy a block of flats, a very most important thing for such a person to do is to do, before you buy it, do your lease audit, something called lease audit. by you doing that, someone can come and advertise a block of flats of 100 flats with a very interesting, good income coming in. But once you get deeper into the underneath and what's going on behind the scenes, and I would like to say that lease audit, it goes in such a way that you look into the all people that are leasing that building individually. Where are they working, and so on and so forth, because you don't want to buy, because you might find that even a year before they started advertising, or few months before they started advertising, they just put everyone, bad tenants, average tenants, and so on and so forth. So they are selling you that potato that is already slightly rotten, and long run, 10 months later, 2 years later, you find yourself having a problem if you don't do your thorough due diligence on lease audits. Yeah. So that's very, very important.
And actually, Frank, I actually love that this is the first to do, because more often than not, when we see the adverts, you'd go on your privateproperty.co.za, you see a really great block of flats. More often than not, you'll find that estate agents will say that you're going to get, 13% yield. It's fully tenanted, and they'll give you what the numbers are for the rental collection. They'll give you what the expenses are. They'll tell you that this is how much you'll be netting every month. And you're looking at that advert and thinking, oh, wow, these numbers look amazing. I should definitely go for it. And you almost don't stop to pause and actually look at the leases that are in place. Are they month-to-month leases? Are they long-term leases? How long had they been there? And then even asking for the rent roll, because then that also gives you an indication of, which tenants are notoriously always paying late, which ones are always paying on time. Because I think that's one of the things that, especially when you're starting off, you probably don't know to do and check, whereas it should probably be, usually I ask for that information before I even do a viewing. I think that's actually the kind of assessment I want to know prior to a view, because that would inform whether it's something that I even want to view. So before I even run the numbers, I'm like, just send the rent roll. Here's the info. I literally would be like, here's the information I require. I'll first run my own numbers. I'll go through the COJ statements, the works. Then I'll say, okay, this makes financial sense. Now I'll go and view it. If it doesn't make financial sense, as I'm running those numbers, then there's no point in viewing, because you don't want to go view a place, fall in love, so to speak. Although we always say, Frank, don't fall in love with the property. Don't make property decisions based on emotions. So if anything, that really is a big first do. And I love that Frank has pointed that out, is do your lease audit. It's so crucial for you to understand the nature of the tenants that you're going to be getting on as soon as you buy the block of flats that you want to buy. And now, Frank, then what would be the second thing that we certainly should be doing in the event where we are interested in going into property development?
Yeah, so just to finish off on the other one is that don't count the 12 months of the rental income. I will advise you to count at least 10 on all your, count because remember, there is a lot of movements. There might be that month where there is nothing, or a tenant has moved, and so on and so forth. That leads me to my next do. That is, there is nothing so important like a thorough due diligence, especially if it's a block of flats. You have to get a very, very thorough, vigorous inspection done in there, behind the scenes inspection, your plumbing, because another building can be attractive, but it's a very old, 100-year-old building that was not fixed properly or maintained properly. That can bite you later on. So it's good for you to, and always when you are going to negotiate on those deals like that, always find something that will allow you to be able to not to buy, In other words, if it's, let's say, for argument's sake, it's 10 million. So you have to, on that 10 million, you have to create 100% scenario where you've got your 80, that's good. and you've got your 20, that's bad. On the 20%, make sure that you hit them so hard on the bad ones. That's where it may turn the deal around. So make sure that on your due diligence, on your audits, you make sure that you add that 20% on your negotiations. That will help you to go down, and make sure that you get a very good analysis regards to what to expect in short term, long term, and if you are looking to to take it for a long term. So that's very, very important. Due diligence. I like to say, you go in there, you smell it, you touch it, you walk it, you do the financials in there, the finances of the whole thing. Like I say, don't count the whole 10 months, the whole 12 months, just count the 10 months so that you are on the safe side, because you'll be disappointed, because it's a dynamic of so many different. Can you imagine dealing with 100 different families, 100 different problems, 100 different scenarios, 100 different tenants, some are subleasing, there's so many dynamics that goes in there. So at 10 months on each unit will at least give you that 2 months set aside for your contingency plans. If it happens, praise God. If it not, then that's good. At least your your plan is fun at the end of the day,
And Frank, actually, one of the great things that you're pointing out is, of course, the importance of your due diligence, because it is one of those things that it could be very easy to maybe not do as thorough because maybe you trust the estate agent or whatever the case is. At which point would you advise, viewers at home to be bringing in even their own inspector to get because of course further down you'd certainly be doing that, especially the moment you're buying a relatively big building and you're obviously financing it with the bank. The evaluators will come and they'll pick up all those issues. But certainly for somebody who's looking at assessing deals, also getting a sense of how much work would probably need to be done. At which point would you advise them to be, bringing in an inspector to essentially inspect? I know with some really good sellers, they probably get their own inspector and have a report that they share with you up front, and they put it as part of the investor pack. But not every seller, essentially does that. So as a buyer who wants to be proactive, wants to know what they're getting themselves into from the get-go, at which point should we be then, bringing in that inspector who can give us a better view of some of the things that are potentially not working in the block of flats that you're potentially looking at buying, so that you also have a realistic picture of the costs that are going to be involved for you to fix those issues, and of course also to arm you when it comes to negotiating that purchase price down.
Yeah, I'll say right at the beginning, just before you even talk about the offer and all those sorts of things, because people get so much excited that at some time maybe our brains just get so arrested in such a way that you just forget about everything. You just bought into that. Now you are just so. Make sure that just before you start talking to and from regards to because the agent is there to sell. The agent is there to make they will bring all those nice things. So it's very good for you to take your time, take your time, and right at the beginning, once you make sure that you've got layers of your inspection. Your inspection is not just the building. Your inspection starts from the audits, so that when you are sitting down at the table, you've got at least something to put down and say, okay, thank you for this report. Thank you for your inspection that you've done, but this is what we find out. So you must have you must have power to be able to negotiate. In other words, remember, it will come to help you on your negotiation also when you are talking, because the agent will come with all this. Look, we've done that. Once you just get so excited, and the other thing is that if it's yours, it's yours, So the other thing, people just fear that, oh, I'm going to lose this. Look how, then that's where the problem happens, because you are signing, running, you are not looking, you are overlooking things. Even if you see it, you just jump over it because you are running in such a way that you just want to get this deal so bad. It's so very good, because there is also a reason for them to sell in the first place. Might be they are just selling off, maybe someone was deceased, or they are selling off because they are just expanding to, but all those dynamics, make sure that I will even want to say, I don't want to know what is the motivation behind the selling first before I find out. The finding out part, your inspection, your audits and all your due diligence will at least push you towards the answer. They might give you the answer without even you asking, So going there, don't act so fast in such a way that you are so excited, not even sleeping at night, because this is it. I mean, this is it. But you know what? 2 years later, you've got a problem. So make sure that you take your time, walk slow. You don't have to bounce. Those people that, this project has made me to bounce back. You are not bouncing back there. You have to take steps.
Yeah. Frank, actually, I know I keep saying I love this. It's one of those things that you can't quite quantify, right? And you pick it up a lot with the more seasoned investors that when a deal is yours, it's yours. You don't need to go too fast and to get it. Like, you will get it. And I think the moment you find that we are faster more and more and more, and all these hurdles keep coming, sometimes you almost need to be like, wait, why am I, encountering so many hurdles along the road that are preventing me from, acquiring this property? Maybe I should stop, take stock, and just assess what exactly is going on.
You're right.
Because I think a lot of, and I've been in those situations way too many times where you're also quite excited. You've viewed the building, you've run the numbers make sense. You were even prudent in your numbers, and you're thinking this is the one, but you just keep finding these hurdles and getting these hurdles. And at some point you just need to be like, wait, this is not coming together. And it's not by lack of, numbers or whatnot. Maybe this is just not meant for me. There's always going to be another property deal. And I think that's probably one of the big things that, people who've done property for a little bit realize there's always going to be a sweet deal. So if you miss one, it really isn't the end of the world. There are quite a lot of them, especially right now. We're seeing quite a few deals coming up. I mean, sometimes you do have to, kiss a few frogs before you get to your prince, but there certainly are a lot of deals. Frank, I want us to go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll also explore what are some of the things we absolutely should not be doing. Because as I can imagine, a lot of us are probably going to want to take advantage of, this buyer's market. We are seeing some blocks of flats on the market. Some of the prices are actually really reasonable. And I'm sure there are people who might want to jump onto those deals without making sure that they do their right research, do their thorough due diligence, and make sure that they, follow the right steps before they clinch that deal. We're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, I certainly want to hear from you at home. I mean, if you've ever bought, even if it's a small block of flats, what would be some tips you'd like to share with our viewers at home around what worked and what didn't work? Or even if you had bought an investment unit, because I think this is one of those things that you're also able to apply when you've bought an investment unit, especially, let's say, if you've bought a house that is going to be a multi-let. So really understanding the dynamics of how that essentially is going to work, because it's going to be more than one person who's going to be in that particular property. We're going to go for a quick break, and we'll be back just after this. Welcome back to episode 130 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zama. This evening, I'm joined by Frank Ngwenya, who's the co-founder and MD of Fadu Group, and we're looking at the property development do's and don'ts from a seasoned developer. Frank, before the break, we were exploring some of the things that we certainly should be doing in the event that we want to, go into buying that block of flats. And it doesn't really matter what the size is. Of course, that first one was that lease audit. You want to get a sense of what leases are currently in place. Are they month to month, or the nature of the leases? And really want to get a grip on that, because this is part of what the business is going to be about. So you really need to get a very good sense of that activity. Then you also want to make sure that you're prudent in your calculations. Frank was saying there that if there's a lease that's in place for 12 months, certainly make sure that you factor in vacancy rates, because that is a reality, or sometimes where people do not pay their rent on time. And then, of course, you need to do thorough due diligence. And due diligence has various layers. There's one that you certainly do start doing at the very beginning, before you even view or sharing. Usually when I look at block of flats, before I even go to physically view a block of flats, there's certain documentation that I'm already asking an estate agent, certain questions that I'm already asking an estate agent from the get-go, and that is going to determine whether or not a block of flats is worth me actually going and viewing. And if anything, I actually use that even when I'm buying one rental unit, so it isn't just for a block of flats. You want to understand, are the leases in place? How long are they there for? The rental profile. You want to understand what the lease agreements that are in place are, and those kinds of things. So I think that's certainly something that you're able to use even when you're buying an apartment or perhaps a house. So it isn't something that needs you to be shopping for a block of flats in order to start doing. And now, Frank, do share with us what are some of the things we should avoid doing? And we've already touched on one of them, which is not buying with our emotions. And we always emphasize this one, that don't make emotional decisions, because ultimately this is a finance decision. Yeah. And if the numbers don't stack up, then don't go rushing into it thinking, somehow the numbers are going to start making sense. What else should we definitely not be doing when it comes to, looking at going into property development?
DONT, don't, please, I'll repeat again. Don't, you see you're laughing. Yeah, don't, number one, over leverage, and then number two, don't follow the norm. When it's a boom, don't follow, when it's a boom, everything is go.
Frank, I actually want to stop you there. Before you even look at don't follow the norm and you expand of that, explain to people what you mean by over leverage. You and I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I smile because I've made that mistake before. I've paid dearly for it. So I understand all too well the power of being overly geared, the danger rather, not the power, the danger of being overly geared. And that if you didn't do it deliberately and put the right systems in place, you can burn quite literally, at the end of the day. So explain to our viewers what we mean when we say don't over leverage.
It's got so many layers, but the one that is common is just overpriced assets that you just go in. You just go in because it's a go. Everyone is doing student res, everyone is doing this, then you just go all in there fully, and just take as much maximum as you possibly can borrow or get from the banks and so on and so forth, because it's just a season of go. In other words, it's a boom market. So if it's a boom market, a lot of people, that's why I would say 8 to 10 years, during that boom, then the 10th year, guess what happens? There's a recession. Then guess what happens? During those boom moments, I don't buy a lot. I keep waiting for the bad times. During good times, don't buy a lot as if you are crazy, because everyone is buying. Everyone looks so smart when it's a boom market. Everyone looks so smart when it's a good market. Everyone is doing student res, everyone is doing block of flats. It's nice, everyone. So at the end, when there is too much food, when there is too much items out there, when there is too much assets out there, guess what? People get full. Then when people get full, they're not going out to then we get the recession. Then what happens? Then we all fall. Then during that time, that's where I've made most of my money during bad times, believe it or not, because those are the times when I'm getting the right deals. Yes, you can still buy during the good times, now we are on the pandemic season. This is the right time to buy. You were saying when we started earlier that I see very good deals coming in. Those are good deals. That's the right time for me where I start looking at deals. We just acquired the land now. I mean, ridiculous price, in a prime area, people just let go. That land, it was going 4 or 5 times the price, and it's already zoned for about 22 units. You see, we just bought it now close to nothing, But if we put in an offer 5 years ago, if it was a go time, then guess what? We're going to get it 5, 10 more times the amount that it is. So I would say don't over leverage on the financing, don't over leverage on even your renovations, don't over leverage on your staff, don't over leverage on each and every corner that you do, don't over leverage on because people also do over leverage on the beauty of the thing. There are other assets where you don't even have to do a whole all out high end finish, finish.
The new modern finishes. I think Frank, I think one of the big things is it's also about understanding the market that you're going into, right? So if you're going to be going into, let's say, student accommodation, then there isn't a need to be putting sort of high-end, top modern finishes, because you're simply not going to make those kinds of returns. Whereas in the event where you are going into a more modern, we'll say market-based or market pool, then those kinds of finishes probably add value, able to hike up the rental slightly. But the reality is, right now, I mean, especially if I look at the major metros, there's so much stock on the market that there probably isn't a need for you to go lavish even in some of the finishes. To viewers at home, we certainly want to hear from you. What have been some good tips that have, that you've been able to implement along your property investment journey, especially when it comes to understanding the things that you should and shouldn't be doing? Whether you are buying that first block of flats or certainly buying that first investment property, I think it is one of those things that we want to constantly keep learning about, especially right now as more and more people are increasingly getting interested in property. You almost want to say, look, don't make these mistakes. I made them. They cost me time. They cost me money. There's no reason why you at home should be making them. Andrika Lechanyana, I see you on Facebook. I see her saying, hello, Zama. I haven't seen Andrika in a while. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, if you are watching us on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter, we also want to hear the love from you. I haven't heard from the resident gang leaders this evening, unless the team hasn't sent me your comments, but I certainly want to see some of the activity from the resident gang leaders. So I think one of the big things, Frank, you've pointed out, you definitely don't want to over leverage. You don't want to also follow the norm. What else should we be avoiding when it comes to what we definitely should not be doing when it comes to our property journey?
Yeah, if I'll go to the development of just new units, don't go on a sectional title unit without enough funding for it, or with a fully developed master plan, because it's hard. It's very hard, Rather, you can look into your hybrid system, your title plan type of system. It will help you to build, because at the end of the day, the bank can be able to pay you per stages. Then, in return, you're able to build fast. I've done some sectional title. It's not easy. It's very hard, because it's all cash from your pocket many times until you put your last brick, so it's very hard. Make sure that you research that. Make sure you know the zoning of even the building that is fully let. What is the zoning there? For example, you want to expand at a later stage. You want to put something down there. You want to put some little bit of stores down, or you want to do something else. What is the zoning for that specific? It's either, be it land, be it a building, be it a commercial building. Also, make sure that you do that zoning, not inspection, zoning due diligence also, so that you make sure that whatever you are getting yourself into, and also make sure that you get a very clear behind the scenes amounts that are not attached to the deal, because there is also a lot of amounts that may come your way in future. And also following the norm is that we tend to, especially the creativity, we tend to just follow the easier one, the easier part, you know. The easier one, the easier part, we rush on that, then we find ourselves stuck in there, because now everyone is doing it, so I can do it. My brother is doing it there in the corner, then I can do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I see we've got and I love this hashtag Ubongani Queen B Mabunda on Facebook saying we are here, hashtag top fan gang. I absolutely love that hashtag. I think we're going to make it a thing. That's hashtag top fan gang, gang rather. So that is, of course, for all the ringleaders on Facebook, who are, of course, our top fans. So that's going to be your hashtag. I absolutely love it. We are still, of course, cooking up that competition that I promised you about, where we will have the battle of the social media platforms. So I'm sure that the top fans on Instagram, on Facebook, even on YouTube, certainly needs to up their game. And we're going to see what we will give away. I think if you've got any suggestions, do send them through. I'm still brainstorming with the team what we should make this particular giveaway. I'm liking the rivalry between the various social media platforms. So we certainly want to see, how would you want this one to be rewarded? I already have a great idea up my sleeves, but I'm not going to share it just yet. Actually, I want to hear from you at home. What would be a great, prize you'd certainly want to get from us? I'm going to share which one I think we might be able to pull off in the coming episodes. You certainly do want to stay tuned to that. Frank, before I let you go, any final tips to our viewers at home when it comes to them going into developing? I think a lot of us are finding it quite lucrative. I'll share my final tip before I let you go in terms of what people should be doing, because I've walked this journey and I've seen a thing or two that I think we certainly should do, because I think we've covered the don'ts quite well. Any final tip from your side, Frank?
Yeah, I'll say, let me balance this way. There are two markets here. We've got a market of, the location market, that is a 16 billion a year. That's working on between 11 to 16%, the growth part. And we've got the suburbs market. That's a 4 to 6%, So when you're doing that, don't just rush because it's a suburb, you just rush to that because it's a suburb. It's going to be, quick. You might find yourself getting into a slower market. So there is a booming market that is a location. I haven't done, I must admit, the location as yet. I've done some few plans for my guys there, the location that are doing some back room type situation. Then that market is thriving, my sister. It's really, really thriving. For those people that are in those part of areas, I would say they can start, and the rules may be slightly better for you there than in the suburbs also. So that's very, very, very good for you to have a look at that, and check if it's going to be possible. But apart from saying that, my last word is just to encourage people, just put your foot in the door. How do you start? Just put your foot in there, visit those open houses, speak to the relevant people, ask a lot of questions, be willing to learn, be willing to learn, be willing to make mistakes also, start somewhere, because I was fed up and I just started from what I had. What I had was just a piece of land that I managed to squeeze in 3 units, and I started from there. So it's very simple. I just wrote a book now. In that book, there is nothing 10 points to this. It's just very simple, basic things that we can all do, So it's not something magical. It's just very, very simple things that anyone can do from home, and you can be able to succeed at the end. Yeah.
And Frank, we're certainly going to leave it right there. And I think before I, wrap up our conversation this evening, my final tip to viewers at home is you actually want to view as many properties as possible. Yeah. And this is beyond if you're looking at, for example, certainly now going into buying your first block of flats, even when you're looking for your primary residence or looking for your investment property, get into the habit of viewing properties. I know that this is an extreme. There's a property investor from I think it's from the US. There's a podcast from the US that I listened to, and they were saying that they probably, for every one property that they end up buying, they probably view about 50, right? Yeah. I mean, those odds are a bit of a mess, because if I had to follow that, I would have viewed quite a lot. I don't think you have to view that many, but you certainly want to get into the habit of viewing properties, especially in the areas that you've identified. You want to be viewing them at different times. You want to understand what you are seeing in different, blocks of flats, or if it's an apartment you're looking for, what you're seeing in different estates and complexes, because that really does expose you to a lot that is available out there, and also opens you up to being able to ask certain questions once you're serious to make that offer. So do make sure that you're viewing as many as possible. And sometimes you can use the tip that I gave around, make sure that you have almost your previewing questions with the estate agent that you use in order to sift out if you want to view that particular property or not. Yeah. I see here Sandile Ngomalo saying, we're here, guys, please share the guest contacts in case we need advice of air. Thanks, Zama. Sandile, I think one of the things, we have shared the link to his website. It is fradugroup.co.za. I will ask the team to just post it again down here. But when you look at the top of this particular stream, it's fradugroup.co.za, and you'll be able to reach Frank directly. And of course, that's probably a great note for us to leave it on. Frank, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so very much. And the other one is frankngwenya.com. frankngwenya.com.
And, yeah, and there you have it, folks. That's also frankngwenya.com. And Frank, we've got a last question here from one of the top fans, Ubongani Mabunda, asking, what's the name of the book that you mentioned? You mentioned that you've written a book. What's the name of the book?
Oh, my book is Anointed for Entrepreneurship. Anointed for Entrepreneurship.
And would they be able to get it on frankngwenya.com?
Yes. Yes, they'll be able to, yeah.
So on frankngwenya.com, you'll be able to get Anointed for Entrepreneurship. Well, that does bring us to the end of the Private Property Podcast. It has been a pleasure to be with you this evening. I do hope that we're going to have an incredible week if we don't burn, because the heat is actually unbearable. And of course, we never leave you alone, whether you are tuning into the Private Property Podcast with myself every weekday at 7 p.m. On Wednesday, as SD Clarkson takes over with the First Time Home Buyer Show just after this show. And of course, the new show on Tuesday and Thursday, that is the Farming Podcast. So you certainly want to tune in. That is tomorrow at 1 p.m., the Farming Podcast, right here on our social media platforms. Well, that's it from me, Zama Khumalo, this evening. I'll be back again on your screens tomorrow evening. Until then, hoping you're staying home, staying safe, and keeping hydrated. I'll be back again tomorrow.
Ciao.
Hi, I'm Clifton Smithers. I live in Belito, where my partners and I run a business called Union 3. As a family, we chose to move here about 6 years ago. What attracted us to the area was the safe and relaxed lifestyle of the North Coast. We're surrounded by so much natural beauty, and we love that it's so casual. It's just not as intense as a busy city. In fact, that's one of the main reasons there's so many people moving into the area. There's some amazing lifestyle estates out here. We've got Zimbali, Brettonwood Estate, and Zimbiti, to name a few. The Belito Lifestyle Centre caters to everyone's needs. There's also some smaller commercial centres like Tiffany's and Salt Rock. There's some excellent restaurants to choose from, and there's a really wide variety of activities on offer. From mountain biking out on the trails to surfing at any one of the beaches, there really is something for everyone. This quiet little town really comes alive over the weekend. The live concerts and the farmers market at the Lychee Orchard is very popular. With the new international airport just 15 minutes down the road and the unmatched lifestyle that this place offers, it's no wonder that the North Coast is the fastest growing town in South Africa. My family and I absolutely love it here, and this is our neighborhood.